fulfilled is the day the Lamb is slain. That's Passover. We just talked about the second Passover. Now I jumped ahead here. Let me jump back to my document and look at this. Why am I saying that Jesus is going to celebrate the second Passover? So let's go to the part of the document that speaks about this. So my question is, will Jesus fulfill the second Passover as the man who went on a long journey? So look here, in Numbers 9, Moses instructed by God to allow the provision of a second Passover for a man who's going on a long journey. Well, to date, Jesus has been on a long journey for 1,990 years. Okay, so let's see what Jesus spoke about this long journey. So Jesus already fulfilled the first Passover at his first coming. John the Baptist said, "There goes Jesus, there goes the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world." That was his first coming. So at his second coming, you would think he would fulfill the second Passover as Moses instructs. Why? Because Jesus has been on a long journey. So recall the parables where Jesus talks about a man who went on a long journey. And Jesus likens himself to that very man. So Luke 20, he began to tell a parable. He says, a man had a vineyard and rented it out to vine growers and went on a long journey, went on a journey for a long time. At harvest time, okay, the landowner sent his son. Okay, Matthew 25 speaks of the same thing. Jesus says, "For it will be," this is when he's judging sheep and goats, "for it will be like a man who goes on a journey, who called his servants and entrusted them his property. Now after a long time, the master of those servants came," second coming came, "and settled accounts with them." Now that long journey, would that be on the second Passover? Mark chapter 13. "But concerning the day or hour, no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. But be on guard and keep awake. For you do not know the time, for you do not know when the time will come. It is like a man who goes on a long journey, when he leaves his home and puts his servants in charge, each with his work, and commands the doorkeeper to stay awake. Therefore stay awake." So think about this. There's 3 times that Jesus mentions a guy going on a long journey. And each time has a different ending. The first one is, after the long journey, it's harvest time. The second one is, after the long journey, he comes and he judges his own servants. He settles accounts with them. In Mark 13, after a long journey, he's compelling his people to stay awake. Because most of the church is fast asleep. Not even in the pews. I guess they're at home watching their service online, if they're even doing that. So that would be why I would contend that this Numbers chapter 9 speaks about the man who is on a long journey shall keep the second Passover, or the Passover in the second month. To me, it's very compelling. Here's the stuff about Noah, which we already talked about. So if I go back up to here, so the lamb is slain on Passover. Okay, one more. All right, so you guys remember when Jesus was, the Pharisees were always grumbling at Jesus because he was likening himself to his father, which he referred, to God, which he referred to as his father. The Jews didn't like that. They grumbled at him. So here, John chapter 6. This is another clue. Okay, so the question is, Jesus is the bread that rained down from heaven. The question is, when did this bread actually fall in ancient Israel? When the Israelites, not just the Jews, but the Israelites, were in the wilderness. Let's see. So the Jews grumbled about him because he said, "I'm the bread that came down from heaven." Came, past tense, came down from heaven. They said, "Is this not Jesus, Yeshua, the son of Joseph, whose father and mother we know? How does he now say, 'I have come down from heaven'?" And Jesus said to them, "Do not grumble among yourselves. I'm the bread of life. Your fathers ate manna in the wilderness, and they died. This is the bread, himself, that comes down from heaven, so that one may eat of it and not die. I am the living bread that came down from heaven. If anyone eats this bread, he will live forever. And the bread that I give you for this For the life of this world is my flesh. And of course they got mad at him because he was telling them to eat his flesh and drink his blood. They went crazy when he said that. But we can look back at that and know what he was talking about. So Jesus likened himself to the bread that came down from heaven in the wilderness. So when did this bread fall for the first time on the children of Israel? Well, if you go to Exodus 16, you can read about this event. And I want to show you both of these at the same time, both sets of verses. Look at John 6. Look at Exodus 16. The people of Israel came into the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month. Here we go again. The 15th day of the second month. And they grumbled against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. And then the Lord said, behold, I am about to rain bread from heaven for you. And the people can go out and gather that bread. You know the story, right? So the interesting thing here is that the bread, the manna that fell into the wilderness, that Jesus said that he actually was, it fell on the 15th day of the second month. Now look how, if you look both sets of verses, see how even in Exodus, the people of Israel are grumbling at Moses. And the word in the ESV here, grumbled. Go look up here in John 6. Jesus said to them, do not grumble among. It's the same thing. This is in the Greek, it's still got translated grumble. So, what do we learn from this? We learn that Jesus has given us a clue, in my opinion, that there's something going on about this second month thing. Let's go up here. Jesus comes down from heaven as the manna fell on the 15th day.
I'll leave a link to this video. I have to stop it here for the sake of time, but go check this video out because he points out how it was the 27th day when Noah left the ark.